Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're having a lovely day. Today I wanted to continue on my series of the lies that uphold the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, the DMCA, a law that many of you dislike. There are sections of the DMCA, like Section 1201, that very badly need reform. These are the parts that say if you are breaking a digital lock in order to get access to something, even if it's to fix it, that is something that's punishable by 3 to 5 years in federal prison. In my last video, I focused on misconceptions regarding medical equipment because medical equipment is always fear-mongered on, and I decided to use the exact same documents and statistics that the opposition was using to demonstrate that medical right to repair by third parties is incredibly safe and critical to the functioning of the United States healthcare system. And today, I would like to use the same documents that are being used by the anti-car repair people to demonstrate why they're full of it. So I'm going to play some testimony from Mark Humphrey, and we're going to go through this piece by piece.
I wanted to be clear about one thing first, just so that there's no confusion. Auto innovators do not oppose the renewal of the existing exemption. The issue is with this proposed exemption. And one thing that I think has been overlooked, both in most of the comments and so far today, is the fact the auto industry has taken great steps to make this kind of data available through the Memorandum of Understanding from 2014 and the data sharing commitment that was entered into just last year. And these agreements give access to a lot of the data that we're discussing. In particular, the data sharing commitment provides access to telematics data that is provided to dealers. I would point out that one of the comments filed was a joint filing by the FTC and the DOJ, and they actually spoke glowingly of the auto industry as a standard to aspire to because of the lengths that the industry has gone to provide this kind of data to consumers and enable people to repair vehicles.
So the first thing that you see here is he's pointing to this particular document by the FCC. This is a document called Nixing the Fix that was released, I believe, in 2021. And he's referring to this line. The MOU, which is a Memorandum of Understanding, because I dislike acronyms, has been raised as a model of self-regulation that could apply in the broader right to repair context. He's talking about this as a model of self-regulation, like it's perfect. And he's quoting this. But what he's doing is he's ignoring what's in this next paragraph over here, starting from this gentleman's name. Aaron Lowe explained at the workshop that the Automobile Memorandum of Understanding, while initially sufficient comprehensive document, does not necessarily extend in its current form to telematics. On November 3rd, 2020, Massachusetts voters passed a ballot initiative that extends the state's 2013 motor vehicle right to repair law to telematics. The new law would require, starting with the model year 2022, manufacturers of motor vehicles sold in Massachusetts to equip any such vehicles that use telematic systems with a standardized open data platform that would enable vehicle owners to authorize independent repair facilities that are not affiliated with the manufacturer and independent dealerships to retrieve mechanical data from and send commands to the vehicle for repair, maintenance, and diagnosing testing. He's quoting the part that he wants, which is this has been raised as a model of self-regulation that could apply, but he's completely leaving out the entire paragraph that goes over what is missing from the MOU and just pretends that everything is okay. If he was simply looking at his own data and he was ignorant of it because he didn't look at the data on a different website, I could say that this was not being done maliciously. However, given that the data that directly refutes what he is saying is literally on the same page, I can only assume that this is malice because this man, in my opinion, gets paid when it's more difficult for you to be able to do what you want with your property, which is a trend that's been going on with almost every hardware manufacturer in every industry at this point in time. They want you to go to the dealer. They want to be able to monopolize every single area over which they make money off of you after the sale. Next thing, let's read this actual Memorandum of Understanding just to go over what it is. So, Automotive Repair Data Sharing Commitment. Do keep in mind, this is a Memorandum of Understanding. It is a commitment. This commitment is the same as the commitment that, this commitment is as good as the commitment that Michael Douglas will make to the wife that he has in any movie he made from 1980 to 1997. It's like, it's not real. It can be broken at any given time with no punishment except for, of course, what happened to the poor little bunny. Rest in peace. But this is not a binding legal document. This is a promise. Like, we promise we'll be good. There's no contract here. There's nothing that you could go to court on. And more importantly, when you scroll down to the section in telematics, tell me if you can see the weasel language here. To the extent that specific telematic diagnostic and repair data is needed to complete a repair and also provided to an automaker's authorized dealers, the automaker shall make available such information to vehicle owners and third-party independent facilities if it's not otherwise available through a tool or third-party service information provider. Now, with a line over here that matters the most is if it is needed for the repair. Now, who is determining that? The automakers. So the automakers are determining what it is you need and do not need for repair. For those of you who are curious as to why this matters, do you know anybody or have you ever called a health insurance provider and said, my doctor says I need this treatment or I will be in pain or die, and they've said, we don't think that that's medically necessary? I was talking with Thomas Queter from the Mobility Independence Foundation at the Abilities Expo recently, and he was talking about dealing with insurance companies with regards to wheelchairs, and they will tell you that the only thing that is considered medically necessary is that you are able to get from your bed to your bathroom, being able to actually go outside and engage with the world in a manner that allows that individual in the wheelchair to buy groceries or to have a wheelchair that allows them to go outside into the real world is not considered medically necessary. While you can technically maybe get away with doing a repair without needing this, if it makes it considerably harder to offer the same level of service as the dealer, you are in some sneaky weasel way making it more difficult. I may not even necessarily need the schematic or a multimeter to fix a laptop motherboard. I could just sit there and literally replace every one of the 5,000 fucking components on the board until I figure out which one it is. Obviously, that's not necessarily going to be economically viable to complete the repair. But if somebody wanted to be a wise guy, they could say Lewis doesn't technically need this, he simply wants it. And this goes back to a conversation that I used to have with Paul in a joking way at the old store. He was a big photo buff as a hobby. He has some cameras from the 1930s and 40s and a great camera collection, and he would get the B&H photo catalog. He would look at a $6,000 lens and say, I need this. And I would take the book from him and I go, no, you want. He's like, no, I need it. And when you're dealing with the difference between need and want is going to be a subjective thing to many different individuals. While I technically could take a donor board and sit here for the next 2 weeks replacing every single component on this motherboard until it works again, that is not necessarily an economically viable way to do the repair. I would like to be able to have access to a multimeter and a schematic and everything else so that I have a more efficient way of performing the repair in a manner that a customer would actually want to pay for. When this says we are only going to give this access when you need it, what they're really saying is that the dealers and the automotive manufacturers, who are the people that profit when you do not use an independent repair shop, are the people that get to say when something that would help an independent repair shop can be provided to them. And the reason that I find this disgusting is because as the owner of the vehicle, as the person that paid $40,000 to $80,000 or $20,000 for the car, you're the one that owns the data and you're the one that should decide where this data is going. Nobody else. When you deal with the OBD2 port, I always mix up ODB and OBD. I hate acronyms. When you deal with the OBD2 port on the vehicle, it will tell you what is going on with the car right now. But let's say your car has some sort of intermittent issue. Let's say that your car has a check engine light, but then it doesn't have the check engine light when you get to the shop. The OBD, fuck acronyms. The OBD2 port will give you an error or no error, but if you have access to the vehicle telematics, you could see what was going on at the time that that check engine light goes on. You can see all the recorded information in the logs. Think of it like if I'm dealing with fixing a MacBook motherboard and that MacBook is randomly crashing. If I have access to the entire system log, I can see that that was a GPU kernel panic. If I don't have access to it, then I'm literally guessing. So while I technically can do the repair without it, if I'm willing to guess and change out every single component, I am technically able to do the repair, but it's to a much lower standard of quality. I may have to do something like replace everything in the system. I may have to replace a $1,000 system board rather than replacing a 5-cent capacitor. And that's something that would suck. It's weasel wording, and they always manage to leave something in there that allows them to say this in front of the Copyright Office while leaving out all the ways in which you get screwed. For instance, over here in the Diagnostic Network, they go over different repairs and things that you are not able to get access to. Also, some of these things are only available if you are a certified body shop, and many of the car mechanics that are doing this type of work are not body shops. They're working on the electronics and everything else in the vehicle. And when you take a look at this study here from the U.S. Government Accountability Office, I believe it is on page 6, 6 automakers we interviewed told us that they do not provide dealerships with any access to telematics data. This is several years after the Memorandum of Understanding came out. This is the problem that shows up when you've made an arrangement that is not actually binding. Again, they wrote down on a piece of paper saying that we will if we think you need it. They're not saying that we will sign a contract that is enforceable by law. So it means nothing. It's a promise from Michael Douglas to not cheat on his aging wife in a 1980s movie he's in. The two that do provide access to some telematics repair and diagnostic data provide a similar level of access to independent repair shops. For example, one automaker provides access to telematics data to independent repair shops in some circumstances when it may be useful, but not necessary for repair, such as to provide historical information on the vehicle's health. While 11 out of 14 independent repair stakeholders said that independent repair shops do not currently need data for the repairs, I would argue that this allows your customers a better experience when you scroll down to remote diagnostics. If automakers allow dealerships to directly access a vehicle's telematics data, including detailed diagnostic codes, they may, at an owner's request, be able to remotely diagnose a vehicle and tell the vehicle owner what repairs, if any, need to be conducted. Independent repair shops that do not have access to that would need the owner to bring the vehicle to their shop for diagnosis, and that's going to cause a lower quality of repair. Whether or not you agree with the dealer, this is not up to the dealer. This should be up to the owner of the vehicle and the mechanic that you are taking it to. As the owner of the car that you spend $20 20 or 30 or 40 or $80,000 on, it is up to you to decide whether or not that data should be made available from your car, because it's your data, to the independent mechanic. If you don't trust the independent mechanic, don't give them access to the data. If you do trust the independent mechanic, you give them access to the data. Next, in another filing that he references, this is in that same fucking document. Other factors. Restricting access to non-copyrightable telematics data risks establishing a competitively harmful bottleneck by depriving users the ability to share this data with aftermarket parts manufacturers, third-party maintenance and repair services, and other adjacent markets that would put such information to valuable commercial use. This restriction is unwarranted in light of the minimal risk of infringing use of copyrighted ECU programming. This is from the United States Copyright Office, comment of the United States Department of Justice and Federal Trade Commission, exemptions to permit circumvention of access controls on copyrighted works, which is the subject of the very hearing that we're talking about, where he's pretending that these documents say things that are the opposite of what they say. Lastly, one of the very important things to note about the 2023 Memorandum of Understanding is that it does not include medium and heavy-duty vehicles. So this is kind of like when right to repair passed in Texas, but it excludes motor vehicles, it excludes tractors, it excludes home appliances, it excludes marine equipment, or when right to repair passes in Minnesota, but it excludes like video game consoles. I mean, there are people with medium and heavy-duty vehicles that may use those vehicles for professional work, for hauling large loads, for construction, that also want to be able to have their vehicles fixed by an independent mechanic, and for that independent mechanic to have access to the data on their vehicle that belongs to the owner of the vehicle. This is all left out of that lying weasel's testimony, and I think it's really important to start calling them out as often as possible. And as part of Hulu Foundation's mission to reform and revise Section 1201 of the DMCA so that you have the right to work on, modify, and repair what you bought and paid for, we are going to push back against these lies in an organized fashion as often as we can. I want you to understand just how unreasonable this is when we're talking about exemptions to Section 1201 of the DMCA. We're not saying that the automaker needs to make this access available. It would be nice if they did, but we're not even saying they need to do that. We're saying that if somebody comes up with a tool that allows them to get access to the data that's in their car, we don't want them to go to federal prison for 3 to 5 years. And I think that's reasonable. There are people on my channel that are highly libertarian-minded, very anarcho-capitalist in their thinking, that think, I don't want to tell the government to force a company to do something that they don't want to do. And point taken. They say that that's a part of the non-aggression principle. They say that that is initiating force against somebody to get what you want. This is the opposite end. We're saying we don't even want to force the company to do anything. We simply do not want to be put in prison ourselves because we reverse engineer what's in our own vehicle that we bought and paid for and come up with a tool to be able to access our own data. And I think that that's very reasonable. I don't think that anybody should go to prison for 3 to 5 years because they come up with a tool that allows them to access the data in their vehicle or allow their neighbor to access the data that, again, is stored in their vehicle. It's your data. It does not belong to the manufacturers, and they should not get to act like they have a monopoly on your data. Even if you do not think that an independent mechanic should have access to this, it's about whether you believe the automaker should be able to have the exclusive right to say who does and does not have access to the data in your vehicle. Is it your data or is it the manufacturers? Because at the end of the day, if they're telling you that you can go to federal prison for 3 to 5 years and they're lobbying in favor of you being able to go to prison for 3 to 5 years because you get access to the data in your car, in my opinion, they're not on your side. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. We're going to be trying to reform Section 1201 of the DMCA here at Hulu Foundation. This is a law that came out almost 30 years ago. It came out of fear of online piracy. Almost 30 years have passed. I have computer illiterate family members that within 90 seconds can figure out how to pirate almost any movie or television show imaginable and get it if they want. This law has not had its intended consequence at all. All it has done is limit people from being able to legally access what they bought and paid for, and it criminalizes real ownership rather than actually doing what it was intentionally designed for. And we would like to reform the sections of this obsolete 30-year-old law that do not take into account that your car and your thermostat and your baby monitor and your toaster oven all connect to the internet in 2025, meaning that the manufacturer still has control over your product after the sale. As time goes on, we're going to be coming up with initiatives where you'll be able to help, and I hope you'll be along for the ride. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. With that, I'm going to give you some Blackberry the cat. I got her own microphone. I haven't done a video here in this desk for a while. Do you hear her? She's so cute. She's clipping. Let's slow it up again a little bit. you, Blackberry. You're a good girl. Who's my good kitty? You're my good kitty. The attention is over here. All right. See you in the next one. Bye now.